Sverige, or hello from Sweden. Thank you for tuning back in today, and if you are new to our show, a warm welcome to you. Some of you may have noticed that we had to skip our last regular release because I was a little bit caught up with moving from Japan to Sweden. Well, to make up for it, we have an exceptional guest on the show today, Ayne Zarof, with whom we had a thoughtful conversation on what it means to raise children between cultures. Ayne is a Malaysian writer, pediatric doctor, and mother of two young children. She is also a not your average influencer mom on Instagram, sharing not only snippets of her life in London, but also deep reflections from the perspective of a Muslim Malay immigrant mother. I'm at the age where people around me are starting families, if not already, and I find myself worrying about how I can best raise my own children outside of Malaysia. Will they love Malaysian food as much as I do? Will they resent being different from their friends? And what if they can't speak to my parents in Chinese? Let's hear how Ayne untangled these fears when she became a mom and figured out what really matters. Hi, Ayne. Welcome to our podcast. So excited to have you on today.
Great to be here.
I am wondering, since it is still the Raya season,
Yeah.
what do you have on your dinner table celebrating Raya?
Yesterday we went to like two open houses, so we had
Nice.
pizza for dinner. Take up pizza. But I think my husband is making nasi lemak today.
Oh, wow. Very
Oh.
cool. Yeah.
He's the main cook in the household, so I'm very blessed.
Mm.
Wow, such a luxury.
I know.
Yes, that's the dream.
Where do you get your Raya recipes from? Is it from what you had when you were growing up, or do you like exchange recipe ideas with your community in London?
It depends on the dish. So this Raya, we had an open house and we made, my husband made laksa jaho. And I don't know whether you had laksa jaho before, but it's like spaghetti with like curry, fish soup.
Mhm.
And that was a recipe from my Johor side of the family, so my dad's side of the family. Whereas rendang is a mishmash of my grandma's recipe and his parents' recipe. So because we don't have all the like Malaysian ingredients as well, that we need to like substitute it with
Yeah.
whatever is in hand.
Yeah.
But we have a freezer full of like daun limau purut, we have pandan, we have like just in case emergencies.
Did you bring
Yeah.
those back from Malaysia?
So some like if we sometimes we make nasi kerabu and we want the blue, so we brought
Mhm.
the bunga telang from
Mhm.
Malaysia. But then most things like serai and daun limau purut and things we can find locally in London.
Yeah, I think that's also a huge privilege to live in a place where
Yes.
there's more Southeast Asians living.
Yes.
And I actually noticed like a big change in Switzerland in the past 10-ish years. They didn't used to have any of those things. And then now they have limau purut in the regular supermarket, not the Asian supermarket. And I was like, wow, progress.
Asians are taking over the world.
They're discovering that our food is so much tastier.
That's why they colonized us back in the day.
Yes.
That's true though.
Now we're doing reverse colonization through food.
Yes.
So other than like, of course, eating Raya food and spending time with friends, what do you do during Raya that is important to you? I know that you are very connected to your roots, and from your Instagram, you seem like you want to convey a lot of these experiences to your children.
Yeah.
So could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So specifically Ramadan, growing up in Malaysia, Ramadan was just like a thing that everyone goes through. It's like there's lots of vibes around.
Yes.
So I grew up in PJ and I went to high school in Malacca. And it was a big thing. Everyone fasted, everyone woke up for suhoor together, and we break fast together and we pray together. That's just a thing that happens. Well, in London, it's probably like more likely like you're the only one in your workplace or in your school that is doing it, or like one of the few. However, in East London, it's getting more and more common. It's definitely something that we have to actively think about, how to inculcate that like Ramadan spirit in the kids. So we normally have like books on Ramadan that we kind of tee up, and then we do countdowns to Ramadan, and we bring them to the local mosque to pray. Well, they don't pray, they just run around, but like still, and play with the other kids. And then we have like a group of other Malaysian families with like small children as well. We try and break fast in each other's houses and then pray together. The kids get more exposure and to be with their community in that month. And then during Raya, well, Raya in Malaysia is like a whole month, but then like if you live abroad, it's just like one day or like one day or the weekend. So me and my husband tried to take Eid off. So this year I took the whole week off, and that was quite easy because I work part-time. So then we just like woke up quite slowly and then allowed quite slowly and naturally put on our like Raya or mosque baju. We had a little bit of frozen rendang and some pulut, and then we cycled to the local mosque, did our prayers, and then came back and then opened some Eid gifts. So it's like very quiet, like very slow, and then we got ready for our big open house the next day. So we slowly cooked our dishes, got the house ready, and then like the kids obviously get really excited. And then the next day, my son was like, "When is everyone coming? When is everyone coming?" Like every
that's so
10
cute.
minutes, and I'm just saying like lunchtime, and he's just like, "What? When is lunchtime?" So
I actually remember when I was growing up in Malaysia, going to Raya Open House was like a very core memory to me.
yeah,
Even though like I'm Chinese
Yeah.
and I don't celebrate it at home per se,
Yeah.
but we were surrounded by a lot of Malay friends and neighbors, and I always look forward to Raya Open Houses because the food was always so good.
I know, top notch.
Home cooked Malay food is like that's my one chance in the year.
Yeah. Our homes abroad are not as big as the ones in Malaysia. So we have to like kind of not massive open houses like in Malaysia where you can invite hundreds and hundreds of people. But we did manage like 30 adults and like 15 children, which I think is like a good job.
That's big.
That's quite festive.
We have family that are non-Muslim, and then we also have this time around we have a lot of revert to the religion, and we made it a point to like always include them, and then also our fellow Malaysians who are of other ethnicities, because it's important to open your house. I think like if anything I want to pass down to my children is that you should invite people over to your house. I think that's like an art that is slowly dying in this like modern world.
Yeah, everyone's so private.
Yeah, everyone's so
and want their
private.
personal space.
Yeah, exactly. I always go back to, you know, like if you see like the Makcik Melayu with the serkop, the inner tudung, that that imagery, because she always has it on. That means she's always expecting people over, like accidentally. And she's like in the kitchen, in the living room, always having it on. And I was like, why are you always having it on? Like, is this your house? Isn't this your house? But then she's like, yeah, anyone can come.
That's so cute though.
Yeah, so I'm trying to be that circle.
Yes. Always on standby mode for people. Yeah. Do you think that your kids feel Malaysian? And as a parent, I guess you try to instill these feelings in them, but it's also their journey and their experience living in a country that they're born in, which is not ours.
Yeah.
And how would you feel if they grow up and they identify themselves more as British?
Yeah. This is a loaded question. So then I think my answer is a bit long, so bear with me. So
Yeah.
when I was pregnant with my first son, I read a lot of books from the perspective, like it's fiction and non-fiction as well, but it's always from the perspective of an immigrant child.
Yes.
The theme is always like, oh, my parents don't understand me because they're from a different culture, they speak a different language, and I am stuck in the middle of these two cultures. And then I can't really find a book from a parent's perspective because probably they're too busy surviving to write a book. And then I spoke to a lot of my friends who grew up in this like dual culture household, and I just find that I think a lot of the time immigrant parents parent out of fear because you are parenting in an environment that you didn't grow up in, so you're not familiar with, especially if you don't speak the language. You feel like you are in threat of losing your child to this culture that you are not familiar with.
Yeah.
And if your child grows up and suddenly picks another culture that's not yours, you feel like they are rejecting you.
Yes.
But all of that is kind of like muddled up in every parent's fear of losing their children. So throughout the years, I kind of like unpicked it from the fear of, is there enough foundations between me and my child for our relationship to be sustained throughout time?
Yeah.
We don't have to share languages, we don't have to share cultures, but is there enough there, for us to still love each other throughout?
Yeah.
So kind of like delineating that from the fear of, oh, they should be Malaysian because I am Malaysian, is two separate things. So and then like
Yes.
now that I've gained clarity on those thought processes, I'm less fearful of them picking something else, because I feel like as long as I expose them to their roots, if they choose to divert to somewhere else, that's not in my control. So as long as they were made aware of why it's important and these things made them who they are. But if they suddenly think that it's not for them, it's not their responsibility to carry on because they grew up in an environment that is completely different from mine. So and then I think letting go of that, of the outcome of my efforts, is quite freeing and quite, it's light on my shoulders as opposed to, oh my God, they're not speaking Malay or something, like.
You pointed out something that I mean, as a person without kids, like I've never thought of, that the reason why people want to teach their kids about their culture is because they want to have this bond with the children, right? I always thought it was more like, okay, you have to understand where you come from, because you're kind of from there too. Like a more just like understand your culture rather than this is like a personal bond between me and you. I think you have definitely reflected a lot on it, and I find it really nice that at the end of the day it's up to the kids to choose. And I also have some friends who grew up in this kind of setting and now they're adults, and I think a lot of kids, they go through different phases in life, right? At some point they might resent it, they might be like, okay, why I feel so different. But then I think when they grow older, then they start to appreciate all of these heritage that they have received, and then they try to learn more about it. So I think like, it depends on which phase of their lives they're in.
So like one of my really good friends is he was born here, he was brought up here, but his mom is Malaysian Chinese. So he actually taught me a lot about trusting the process, and he said everyone will try and find out where they came from. So just try your best, but surrender the outcome. The only thing that he said was like he wished that he spoke his mother tongue, which is Fuchao, so that he can speak to his other family back home. But other than that, his mom didn't really like push culture down his throat. It's just something that was done at home. Like they ate Chinese food, they celebrated Chinese New Year, and without any like, oh, you should like carry this on.
I think the more you force it on children, like given their understanding of things at that young age, like, the more you force it upon them, the more resistance you will get, perhaps.
Yeah, I think as a parent, it's quite painful thinking like, oh, my kid might be so different from me that I don't recognize them, you know? But
Yes.
coming to that realization, at least, but some parents like completely are in denial. It's like you must be like me,
Yes.
you know. But then there's obviously you can't expect that because they didn't grow up in the environments that you grew up. So and then but then you have to build the foundations that transcends culture, language, and everything else, so that your bond with your
Right.
child is always concrete, hopefully.
Yeah. And how do you balance this with like integrating into the local British culture? Do you also have some British values that you integrate in like the family?
Yeah. So I don't know. It depends on what you define British values
Mm-hmm.
are.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm quite an outdoorsy person now, and I like to go into nature, go camping and things. So I think that
Yeah, nice.
that is something that is definitely inculcated in me by living here,
Yeah.
as opposed to I've always lived in cities in Malaysia.
Same.
Yeah. Other British values. I don't know. What do you think British values are?
Well, I think based on the content that you've put out there, just reflecting a lot on yourselves and talking about your emotions and expressing yourself,
Yes.
your fears and your worries. And I think this is also something that we didn't do so much when I was growing up in Malaysia.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that is done more over here.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I actually really appreciate that. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the content that you put out there, because you really explain the challenges and the fun parts as well of living abroad and all the nuances, right? And it takes a lot of reflection and bravery to share this
Oh, yes.
with the world.
That's a good point because, like, in Malaysia, we like to lapit. Like, we don't really talk about our feelings and
Thought processes.
yeah, thought processes, and just being like completely vulnerable in front of strangers. So that's one thing. I think also distance from people that you are quite familiar with allows you to be quite free in terms of charting your own path, because you don't have the safety net of families who have done it before like you did. So then you kind of have to like carve your own path and try and figure out life really on this like wild journey abroad.
Why did you decide to start your Instagram account and voice out basically your thoughts?
So I've always been like a private person. So doing this Instagram thing is like so out of my comfort zone. But I did it because I wrote the book. I wrote Malaysia and You. And I thought, how else am I going to tell people about it? So then I opened this new account last year in February. And then I slowly like posted reflections, but then I did it in a way where it's like voiceover with like B-roll as opposed to me talking to a camera. But then at one point the book was done, and then I had to like open it up for pre-orders. So then I was like, I can't really do this with B-roll. I have to like talk to the camera and connect with other people. And I really do think that this book is important because like other children need to see themselves in literature, and their stories need to be shared and they need to be proud of it. So I thought like my mission with the book was really like what's driving me. And so I was like, suck it up. Like I know it's gonna be like I know it's gonna be like really awkward.
Has to be done.
And then I remember like filming it in Malaysia in like one of the rooms in my family home, and it was really hot and I was sweating, and then I was like and then I was like, just post it. And at that point I was like and then at that point I think I only had like 400 subscribers or something, like really small. So and then I didn't think that it would go anywhere. And then slowly, kind of like the page grew, and then me talking to the camera with practice and with time didn't seem that scary anymore.
Right.
So and then it kind of like is a gradual process, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. That's really cool. And also, we got your book, and I
Yay!
really appreciate it. I was kind of meta-analyzing it, and I think like more than 50% of the book you talk about food, which I really love.
I mean, Malaysian veins are like filled with just food.
We try to run away, but we don't manage to. And another thing I really enjoy as well is like the big smiles of the characters' faces in this book.
Mm,
It's something that hit me quite hard as well when I left home, that like in Malaysia we smile so much and we are such a warm country, and
yeah,
Europe is, they express themselves with words, right? So
yeah,
not so much with their faces. And I think this is one of the reasons why when I was reading the book, it gave me some warmth
yeah,
from home. So I thank you for creating this book. I really appreciate it.
yeah. You're welcome. And I hope, like, I think when you write a children's book, you kind of say, oh, it's for children, but actually a lot of adults read it and they resonate really deeply with it.
Mhm.
And there was like a whole family in Australia that really resonated with it. And then like they bought, I think, 20 copies to give
Oh,
to
wow.
to
Nice.
each of the family because the granddad was Malaysian. And
Mhm.
then he married an Australian. And then now
Mhm.
their children and grandchildren want to know more about their roots. And then they found the
Yeah.
book and they just like, this is what we needed.
Yeah, that's so cool.
That's nice. Would you say that your parents, I mean, of course, your parents had a very different experience raising you in Malaysia compared to you raising your children in the UK. But would you say that you have similar parenting styles to your parents, or was it very different?
I think it's very different because yeah, it's just like different environments, different generations. Like they didn't have to deal
Mhm.
with social media and like technology and all of these things. And I grew up in a multi-generational household. So
Mhm.
I live with my
Mhm.
grandparents and
Mm-hmm.
in a way they also parented
Yeah.
me
Yep.
as well as my parents. So it's completely different, and being in different countries as well is a different ball game.
Right.
So yes, I did take some aspects of parenting from them just by inheritance. But
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
when I was postpartum with my first, I went into therapy because I had like postpartum anxiety. And then through that, I kind of had to like unpick a lot of learned behaviors and beliefs that I didn't
Mhm.
want
Mm-hmm.
to just pass on to the pass on to the next generation just
Yep.
unconsciously. So
Yeah.
I have done a lot of work to like try and untangle things that I don't want to pass down. So and then I feel like I've also done like an active process.
That's very interesting to hear. Yeah, I totally agree with what you said, like it being like an active effort to have to untangle what you learned naturally growing up
Yeah.
and separate what is good for you and what no longer works for you anymore.
Yeah.
And like make sure that what you pass down to the next generation is only what you want to pass down
Yeah,
to the
exactly.
next generation.
Through my experience with therapy, a lot of it is unconscious.
Yeah.
So things like why I felt so anxious when my baby cried in public.
Mhm.
So and then I had to like unpick that and like figure out why does that affect me so much, because I was so tied down by an image of being a good or perfect mother that can soothe my baby. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
my self-worth was like tied to that. But
Mhm.
although
Right.
I know that I'm like the best mom that I can be for my baby, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
like the external
Yeah.
perception of me as a mother
Yeah.
tied me down, and then trying to like untangle myself from that. And it's a painful process, but it's a very freeing process. So and then I can
Mm-hmm.
start from like ground zero and build myself up as a mother.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that I think is quite special. Like, as a mom, you have your identity as an individual, you have your identity as a mom, you know, your career as a doctor and an influencer on Instagram.
Somehow, I don't
And
know how that happened.
and I had a conversation once with a young mom, and she told me that, you know, she used to do a lot of things before she had kids,
Mm,
and then she was under a lot of stress to maintain herself as an individual when she had kids.
mhm.
And then after a few years, she realized that there's no need to pressure herself or to stress out that, she has to maintain this pre-kid self.
Yeah.
And what she told me was that you should be there for your kids when the kids really want you.
Mm-hmm.
And when the kids grow older, when they're like in their teens, then there'll be a moment when the kids don't need you as much as before.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where you can bring back your individual
Yeah.
self back to the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to know, how do you keep this balance and juggle all of these identities that you have in yourself? And how do you manage to keep up with all of these different roles that you're playing?
I think I mentioned this in like a video that really resonated with a lot of mothers. I said that the most difficult bit of being a mother is the grief that you feel grieving your past self. So I think every new mother will go through this, and I don't think it's talked about as much. You kind of see you at the point of you and your child as a mother, as a new mother, and then you kind of flash back to who you were, and then grieve that person so much because you don't have time, you don't have your body, you don't have things that used to bring you such light. My cousin who really loved Pokemon
Yes.
recently became a mom, and I tried to like explain this process through Pokemon nomenclature, although I'm not like a Pokemon nerd. But I said, imagine if Pikachu becomes Raichu, right? And then suddenly Raichu misses being Pikachu. Like, but you can't like go back to becoming a Pikachu. You're just Raichu. So the key to all of it is to grieve that past self and surrender to the ocean of being a mom. It's going to be up and down, but you will find threads of yourself through that journey.
Yeah.
But I feel like for me personally, a lot of the tension that were the first 3 to 6 months of becoming a mother was trying to hold on to my past self and not letting go of her. So, and then a lot of stress and a lot of tension was coming from that because society said that I needed to bounce back my body as soon as possible. Society said that I had to like make sure my baby was like independent sleeper or whatever. And then society said I need to go to all these mommy and baby classes, although I had zero energy to do so. And then also having like time for yourself to have like a cup of tea, although you haven't showered like for 24 hours. So the more that I like let go of that of my past self with the grieving process, the more that I can like move forward into my motherhood role.
Yeah, I see.
The other things just like morphs around it.
Yeah.
So the thing that gives me most joy is becoming a mother, is being a mother.
Yes.
And then everything else is like secondary. So if I were to lose those things, I wouldn't be that bothered by it as long as I am a mother.
Yeah.
Things like becoming a doctor, I'm now part-time, so I do that very little. This thing with social media, I do sometimes when I have a free day, and it doesn't really affect my time with my kids. And then things like the things that I still love doing is like writing or reading, which I have time to do in between naps and when they are asleep at night. And then it's also there's a lot of joy in like bringing them into the things that bring me joy before, like things like exploring nature, reading with them, making kueh with them, and things like that. So it isn't like a linear line of like your past self and your new self. It's kind of like a slow like journey that is ever
I
evolving.
see. That's really nice. Yeah.
I think it's like before you become a mother, then you have all these hobbies and ideas and thoughts. After you become a mother, I guess you like pass all those down to your children. So you have like people to share it with and who are like so eager to learn from you, and so like they're like a blank slate, I guess. So it's like also a very interesting process to see how you as a mother influence your children as they grow, right? That's also a very exciting process in
Yeah.
itself. So I wouldn't see it as like a death of your old self.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more like, you now have like
Evolution.
offshoots.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't like I think the narrative that is persistent is that children are like a hindrance to yourself. And I
Yeah.
absolutely hate that narrative because
Yeah.
say like
Right.
I have always loved cycling. So and then even previous to children, I love going on my bicycle. And now with children, I get to experience cycling in a whole different way with my children on board my bicycle. So and then like I wouldn't think they are never like a hindrance. They're just like
Yeah.
Yeah.
another way of exploring your hobbies or yourself.
Yeah, I find that a really healthy way of managing these changes in a life. One concern I have as a person living abroad and far away from family is that, being a mother is hard as is, and not having the help and support of family close by makes the whole process even harder.
Yeah.
And I wonder, how do you balance this with your husband? How do you balance the burden of caretaking with him? Or do you have like a network of friends? How does it work?
So things that needs to change is burden of care. So we don't burden ourselves with care. Although
Fair
it's
enough.
like a huge responsibility. I think you definitely have like families here, like me and my family friends, we have quite equal shares of caring for the kids, meaning
Okay.
the husband and the wife. Unless the husband works and then the wife stays at home, then that's a different dynamic. But I think whatever works for your family, obviously we all don't have extended family here that we can rely on. So then it's a matter of juggling between our two work schedules. And like I said, I work part time, so I have like carrying responsibilities for my children on Mondays and Tuesdays. And then on Wednesdays to Fridays, they go to nursery.
Okay.
But sometimes when they are ill and they can't go to nursery, then my dear husband has to like juggle childcare and also working, but he works from home.
Yeah.
So because of the flexibility of his work, we are able to do this. Other people might need other forms of help, like a nanny or an au pair that is a third pair of hands. We also have our families come quite often and they stay for a couple of months. But
I see.
for us personally, we never give them a caring role for our children just because we don't want to rely on that for caring of our children. But
Yeah.
we might need their helping hands once my eldest goes to school and they have like summer holidays and things. There is like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then maybe we need to bring in a family member from Malaysia sometimes, or we have like a few families that live in East London and I voiced out very loudly that we should do a co-op.
Yes.
So that
Yes, I think having this network is so important, right? It does make a big difference, and it also enriches everybody's lives, right? You get to interact with other kids as a child, and then you get exposed to other parenting methods as well.
yeah.
And you see how your environment is unique to you, and there are other ways of doing things as
Yeah.
well.
And the kids are way lot more manageable when their friends are around. They're a lot more well behaved.
Nice.
I do have one question about your choice to remain in the UK. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges that come with, raising a family overseas. And what makes you stay?
So the practical answer is that I'm still in my medical training and I would like to finish that. So pediatrics is a 7-year training route and I'm in year 5.
Okay.
But because I am part time, it will take me more than 3 years to finish. So that's the practical answer. The more like emotional answer is that we have now spent like half or more than half of our lives here.
Yeah.
So we are as much rooted to here than we were in Malaysia. And we did a lot of our active growing up here as well. So if you were to ask me and my husband where is home, we say like London and also Malaysia. And that's also the answer that my 4-year-old would say. And when I asked him where is home, he said London and also Malaysia. So
Yeah.
I was talking to a nurse who came to this country from Malaysia 30, 40 years ago, and she was on the brink of retirement. And then I said, oh, where are you going to stay in retirement? Are you going home? Are you going to stay in London? And then she said, the beauty of it is I don't have to choose. So she can spend like 6 months in London, 6 months in Malaysia, 6 months in London, 6 months in Malaysia. So I thought that that is a beautiful concept because then you don't have to choose. So
Yeah.
I'm teeing myself. I think we are teeing ourselves up for not needing to choose. But I mean, we don't know what will happen in the future.
Yeah. I think, of course, like even though your childhood memories are from Malaysia, but I guess you were in university, you were also in high school in UK, right?
I was in high school in Malacca, and then after
Okay.
SPM, I went.
Right.
Yeah, I did my A levels here. I did my
Okay.
university
A
here.
levels.
So
Yeah, so that's also like formative years of your life, and
yeah,
it makes sense why you would feel like London is your home,
yeah,
even though your whole childhood was spent in Malaysia.
yeah.
Yeah.
I always think of it as like, you know, you were born in a certain family, and then you get married, and then you you kind of get into another family, and then you don't have to choose between
Yeah.
both families. So it's kind of like that kind of concept in terms of an immigrant's life.
Right.
You were born into a country, but you chose to live in another country, and then you kind of have
Yeah.
to mesh both lives together.
Yeah. And it's very fun. I
Yeah.
enjoy doing it
Yeah.
after, of course, I haven't done it as long as you have. Been living abroad for only like 6, 7 years now, but
Yeah.
there are times where I really miss home, but there are
Yeah.
also times where I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Yeah.
So
But now
yeah.
you're like starting afresh in another country, so then it's like
Yes.
it all over again.
Yes.
If you were to like describe your immigrant life, how would you describe it?
I think it's like having parallel lives. I think every time I go back home, I'm like a kid again. And I left home when I was 19. So I think my whole environment is as if I was 19 and nothing changed. And then I have in parallel my life over here where I did all my studies here and experienced so many things. And it's weird to have all these experiences that are not shared with my family, like immediately. Of course, they see photos and stuff, but it's very different from experiencing it firsthand. And I think that's how I would sum it up, like two parallel lives.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not a very attached person in general. Like when I left Tokyo, I didn't feel as sad about it as I thought I would. And the same when I left Malaysia in the beginning. And I think I'm just like a very in the moment, forward looking kind of person. And then whenever I go back to Malaysia, I just feel so lucky to have this base that I'm so familiar with,
Yeah.
how everything works, how people generally behave, what's the norm,
Yeah.
what's like all the dishes that taste familiar to me. So it's like knowing that somewhere out there there's a home that I can go back to, but also like being free to explore the world is like a very liberating experience.
Yeah. I think a lot of people ask me like, what do you miss most about Malaysia? And then I was like, other than the food, what I miss is like existing without needing to explain myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like your existence as a quote unquote foreigner in a different country, you always need to like explain why you're here or like explain your culture, explain why you do things. But then going back and just, you know, being without answering lots of questions is something that I miss.
For sure.
But then sometimes you get like when you have fellow Malaysians over and then you don't have to explain. That's nice as well.
Yeah, that's like a part of us that relaxes in these environments where it's just like,
and then the la comes out, the meh comes out.
Yes. I think it's like a privilege to be able to have both experiences, being out in the world wherever you want, wherever you choose to be, and also having a home to go back to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ayne, for
Yeah.
coming on to our podcast today. We hope to see more of your life and your future productions, maybe your
Yeah.
next book.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, watch this space.
Thank you so much, Ayne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to check out Ayne's book, Malaysia in You, available for orders to the UK, US, Australia, and Europe, and of course, Malaysia. Also, check out her content on Instagram and Medium. Links are in the show notes. And finally, if you liked this episode, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. See you next time.